How long did that take, do you think?
Oh, definitely. Last time I came back to England, I kept saying "heya" to people. And I thought,
Yeah.
because I think in England I say "hiya," I say "hiya" in that quite 80s way, just to like random people.
Yeah. So
Um,
funny, isn't it?
but yeah,
I want to get.
it changes you. Yeah, but the whole thing of
Yeah,
living in
yeah,
America is such a strange
yeah.
experience.
Yeah, well, especially now. I mean, we can get into it if you like. I tend actually often when I speak to my friends in America, just to give them a little bit of a moment to rage and rant. And so, if you want to do that, you can. Otherwise, we'll just get straight into other stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, God, if I started raging and ranting, then I don't think I'd stop. So let's save
Let's
America.
move on.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's save
exactly.
America.
Yeah.
Okay, let's save it. All right, Clover, look at this. Woohoo!
I'm so grateful and so impressed, and like it's so, I really write for lots of reasons, but to connect with people and to to be read and to have that feeling that yes, I am being seen, and that so seeing you with all of the books has been like, and I've watched you on Instagram, like reading through them and posting about them, and I really appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to you.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I often find, I think, if readers aren't writers, I think sometimes there's a tendency to forget how much. It doesn't matter how long ago it was published. You always, as a writer, want to hear about it when somebody reads it, don't you? I mean,
Definitely.
you never tire
Yeah.
of hearing. It could be 20 years if someone reads it and they love it. I'm just saying that to everyone who's turning up now. Always contact the writers, say, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
definitely. It's really, really that's what counts as somebody saying, "Oh, it really helped me," or "It helped me to
mm,
understand this part of my life," or "I love the way you described that," or "Oh, I wasn't sure about the way that you'd done that." I also, it doesn't all need to be gushingly positive, but just
no, right.
engagement, basically,
Yeah.
is
Engagement with it because weirdly, even though they sit on shelves, they have no shelf life. They
yeah,
go
yeah,
on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And so that sense, I mean, that's certainly why I do it. I always feel like readers finish books, that when they read it, then they're finishing their version of it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
There's a completing there.
yeah.
And so hearing back from them as well, I don't know, I've often been surprised sometimes what readers have taken from mine that I haven't noticed at all
Mm.
as well.
Yes, that's
You
really
know,
lovely. That is also
yeah.
really, really lovely. And the funny ways in which, I mean, one of the things that I really love about writing so personally and so openly and honestly is that the more personal that I am about the details of my life, the more other people see their own lives and their own
Yeah.
issues and their own stuff reflected there, even if that circumstances are quite different. And
Yeah.
I found that with the first book that I wrote, which was, it's got a lot about my mum having this massive accident that left her with
Mm.
brain
Yeah.
damage for 22
Yeah.
years. And people talk about the fact that it enabled them to understand a parent who they'd lost contact with, or somebody said they had a brother who was schizophrenic. It helped them to understand. So there was like situations which were really, really quite different, but which they saw their own story. And that's a really wonderful feeling that we're kind of living similar lives, because part of
Mm.
life is feeling so. One of the reasons I write memoirs, because I feel quite lonely a lot of the time, and I want to connect with other
Mm.
people and share this weird, difficult, beautiful, fucked up, wild experience of being a human.
Yeah. And I find that as well. The more detailed I am, the more universal it's greeted with. Is that a
Yes.
sentence that makes sense? But you know what I
Yes.
mean? The more you,
Yeah.
the more people it reaches. Yeah, because
Yes.
each of us, none of us replicate each other's lives. We all have our particular details, don't we? But when we do this, I mean, and so brilliantly, that sense of connection, irrespective of the details,
Yeah.
is that real humanness.
Mm.
One of the things that really struck me all the way through, all four of them, although actually I would say, and we'll get to it, that probably for reasons clear, less with this, but with the three, was the physicality of reading you. It's such a physical experience reading you.
Yeah. Tell me what you mean by that a bit more, because I
Okay.
like I like to understand it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it feels to me like, for instance, I'm going to read right now from the very, very opening of The Wild Other. It's the second paragraph.
Mm.
And you're just talking about the very early days with Dash. I felt like a fist. I mean, even that. I could stop right there, but I'm going to carry on. I felt like a fist. Dash was always naked, plastered bare to my breast, sucking from me as my body dripped milk and tears. Here beside him was the only space I belonged, even if I could barely breathe. I kept myself pressed to him, limiting the time I had to look away from his tiny face and up and out at the world, which had spun right away from me in the weeks since he'd arrived in my arms. So, and this is echoed, there's a wealth of that throughout all four. This is echoed again and again, this sense that you engage physically, you engage with the world through your physicality. And I mean, I cannot get Ossetia out of my head. Clover. I just cannot.
Well, you and me too.
Yeah. Nor Texas and nor Ireland. So particularly with this one, this sense, for instance, that because there felt like a beating up, a physical beating up going on from a kind of numbing trudge through Ireland to a wild sex through Ossetia, through this really physical beating in Texas with rodeo. And then I see it echoed again and again and again through the book. So I want, so that, if that makes sense, that's what I mean. And I wondered if, and I think actually with this was the one, and if I may, and I'm so sorry for the pain and loss you've experienced.
No,
with this one, because of the subject, there was a sense physical was too much.
Yeah.
And so, and it was really noticeable to me. So I just wanted to ask you around that, like your awareness of how you meet the world physically. Have you always been like that? Is that how you began, as when you started writing, you discovered that's how you meet the world?
It's such an interesting question. It's a really sensitive and careful reading that you've done there. And it is true that in The Red of My Blood, it does become, I go into the spiritual realm, and I'm because I'm talking about death, and I am literally trying to kind of be in the room with death, I suppose. So it is much more spiritual and less tangible. And certainly, like, from a young child, I was very aware of the physical world and the beauty of the physical world and the possibilities as well. And we were really lucky to have this really, really happy, abundant with love childhood in the English countryside in the 1980s, which was a lovely time to be a child, and it was for us as children. And my mother had very sort of consciously moved us from the city, which was only Oxford, so it wasn't a big city, but into the countryside. She wanted us, my sister Nell and myself, to have a sort of rural childhood, and her older children she'd brought up, my elder siblings she'd brought up in the city. And she wanted, so she very much sort of went for, very, very consciously, I'm sure, that desire for us to have ponies, definitely, and to walk through wet grass in the early mornings, and to know what brambles feel like, and mud, and the kind of awakening, I think, that comes to children, the sensual awakening, and I see it in my own children, that comes to them through that. So that is something that was absolutely there for me as a child. And Mum had this horrific accident when I was 16, which completely changed my life. But I know that before then I was a very, very emotional child. I was very, I felt things very, very deeply. I always hated, like, partings. I had a big family and tons of cousins, and we had lots of lovely big family get-togethers. And when those ended, I would always be absolutely distraught. So I kind of felt the beating heart inside me strongly. And then what happened to my mum was this accident, which it was, she had a riding accident, and I'd gone off to school that morning, and she was left in a coma for sort of 3 to 4 months. And the experience of watching my mother, who was very vital, fun, loving, quite old-fashioned, but also kind of strangely modern woman. She was a funny combination of, like, she'd been a debutante, like, in the 50s or something, but then she'd
Oh.
left her first husband in the 70s, I think, or late 60s, and kind of rejected this quite conventional upbringing, and then met my dad, who was like 12 years younger than her, and had me and my sister. And so she was a sort of combination of different worlds, and my dad came from a very different social class to her. So she had, and class is, such a big thing in sort of English culture, basically, and we cannot deny it. It is there. So I had this
Mm.
really wonderful childhood, and then the process of seeing this woman who had been so alive and so vibrant in a coma for 4 months, where terrible things were happening to her. Her skull was being repeatedly cut open in order to try and wake her up. They, like, her fingernails would always be bruised with, I don't know what they did, but they, like, tried to get her to wake up. So there was this, like, very, very bloody physical moment in my life as well. And in a sense, she did wake up, but the sort of
Mm.
emotional imprint of that horror didn't actually end, because when she woke up, she was horrifically brain damaged and she couldn't walk or talk or care for herself. And she lived in that state for 22 years. So there was this, and going to see her was always physically uh demanding. It was a, it would rack me physically, and emotionally, and seeing her in that state. So I think
Mm.
that kind of feeds into the writing, and I'm actually absolutely convinced that all of my writing is trying to understand what happened to my mum, and trying to understand what happened to me in a way during that time, because it was like death and trauma was imprinted in her life, and then it just was an ongoing process, because she didn't die, and death brings with it an important and necessary and healing process of grief and renewal. But the renewal didn't happen because she was just dead. She was, like, constantly freshly dead, as it were, yet still alive at the same time. So it was a really, that is, I think, that is what my writing, I think, is about yearning, and that the physicality that you have really, like, sensitively understood, is to do with that sort of physical yearning for her, I think.
Mm.
And as a writer, I am really, really fascinated by this moment right now. And when am sitting down to write, I am always trying to understand, what does today, not just today, but this moment in today feel like? Because, for all the incredible, heavily plotted novels or fiction that you might read, just getting from the side of one day to another seems to me to be like, a day, like the most heavily plotted emotionally. You can move from
Yes.
such extreme different places, and that's why I'm fascinated by nonfiction, because our lives are so wild. Even just a normal day where nothing is going to happen are so difficult, and I'm really interested in, I would love to know about your day, and how does your day go, and the decisions you've made, and the relationships you've had, and things that have worked out or haven't worked out in your work, and all. I want to understand the emotions of other people, and I think in trying to do that, I'm communicating my own emotions as well. So I am often thinking, what does it feel like to stand in front of this pan of pasta as it's boiling up to feed my children for the millionth time? What does this actually feel like? And it's not just, cooking pasta. It's often a torrent of rage, anger, love, resentment, all these things going on, and all I'm doing is put boiling pasta. And I think that's kind of
Mm.
what that's one of the things that I'm interested by as well.
There's a boldness to staying in the body as well, isn't there? I mean, I'm very conscious of that. Kit Duvall always said, or at least she said, we were talking, and she said, memoir can just be about a single day.
Yeah,
And that exactly as you've just
yeah.
described. Memoir can be about standing in front of a boiling pan of pasta and how do I feel? But the boldness it takes, that's what I'm fascinated by. And I witnessed through that all four, is the boldness it takes. And actually, as you've just spoken, to be in the body,
Mm.
because it strikes me that, well, I mean, I was disassociated for many, many, many years. I mean, I really only got back in my body about 6 years ago,
And
I reckon.
did writing enable you to do? What enabled you to do that?
No, sobriety,
Sobriety, yeah.
trauma, recovery. I'm a survivor, so proper work on survivor recovery. But obviously, sobriety was absolutely essential
Mm,
for putting out the fires
mm,
and being there.
mm,
I did a lot of what's it called? Somatic experiencing.
right.
That helped enormously. What was shocking was that I had been dissociated for most of my life
Mm,
for good reason, because it is an answer. Disassociation, leaving the body while remaining here, is an answer to how do I how do I survive? How do I deal with
mm,
this? It's a
mm,
very, very good answer.
mm,
And it's an answer that an awful lot of people come up with for very, very good reasons. And
mm.
I really understand it. And and then I meet you, who is is in it. And well, how afraid are you in it? Because I'd like to say fear, but I don't know if I can't say whether you're in it without fear. Maybe you're terrified. What's it? What's your experience of in it?
Do you mean when I'm
And I
writing about it?
no, I mean when you're standing in front of a boiling pan of pasta and you're like, okay, what does this feel like? And you're feeling all of those. The experience of because I have to get myself like before we met just now, I lay on the floor and I said, okay, and I'll lean into the crazy amount of sensations coursing up and down my body.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think that I feel it through. I mean, it's such an interesting, your questions are so good and they're so interesting and original. And I love the idea of lying on the floor and getting yourself back in your body. I mean, I think that I probably use memory as a way to bring myself into my body. And I think that
Okay.
writing memoir has sharpened my memory and my understanding of the
Mm,
past. And I do know that I have a uh quite quite like unusual ability, I think, to remember certain moments and certain day, not the whole thing, but I can remember. Like if we were talking about something that happened 15 years ago, or I can put myself right into the day, like right into that room, just like I can see your lovely room behind you. I can be in it
yeah.
as though I can
Yeah.
see those things there. And I think that when I'm therefore standing in front of that boiling pasta, that I am remembering and reliving a lot of the other feelings that I've had in different circumstances,
Mm,
doing exactly that same thing. And I think that sometimes it becomes extremely, I don't think it's scary, but it can be extremely exhausting because I am
mm,
constantly analyzing at this moment, this time, how does it feel compared to that time? How might it feel compared to what's going on in the future? And I think that it's really brought it, moving here to America, really brought it into sharp relief because as soon as we moved here, like literally the moment I was walking through into the house, I was thinking, what's it going to be like to leave? What's it going to be like to be here? Is it
mm.
going to be harder leaving than staying? And all of the, and I wasn't, and I remember Pete saying, I just want to just like enjoy it while we're here rather than thinking about what the next bit is. And, but I think it is almost a neuroses, I would say,
Okay. Yeah.
practically, but that neuroses, if that is the correct word for it, I don't know, but it is certainly something which is, I find it hard to just, be kind of, just sort of washed along in the day. I'm not saying that, but I find it quite hard to just just enjoy this bit while I'm doing it. I have to kind
Yeah.
of constantly be trying to ground myself in it, to remind myself to enjoy this bit while I'm in it, without the analysis of everything that's going on around it. So I don't think it's scary, but it's quite exhausting. And I don't know if it's almost,
Mm,
it may be some kind of form of OCD. I don't know. I don't want to like self-diagnose, but sometimes I thought
sure.
possibly this is almost like a form of OCD that I'm going through. But if I can turn that into creativity, and I know that
Mm,
when I am writing a book, like I love writing stuff, like I love writing articles. I was a journalist for 25 years before I ever wrote, well, maybe not before I wrote a book, but I was a journalist for like 10 years before I wrote a book. So I was a journalist for a long time, and I love journalism and I love writing Substack. I love the sort of quick turnaround, but I do really, really love exquisite and drawn out pain, because I'm certainly a masochist, which goes on in writing a book and
Yeah.
trying to.
Okay.
And when I first got here, I understood that I wanted to write this book, but like about marriage, and then that turned into actually something more about, which I'm writing at the moment, about midlife. And
Mm,
it's only now, like almost 3 years into this process of living in this country, that I'm really understanding what I have gone through here, and I am able to communicate it. And I've spent so much time sitting with my writing, sitting with my feelings, and it is in that time of sitting that I and the sort of physicality of the sitting as well. I think it's such an interesting observation, like that physicality of being present to it, that I really understand the emotional process of what has happened here, and I actually find kind of some resolution in it, like the anguish we were talking about. The how do you get back into your body? That the sort of
mm,
neurotic anguish feels as though it has a point, I suppose, when I'm able
mm,
to express it
mm.
in the long form of a book. I do really enjoy that long process of working something out.
I mean, I think that's it. I think it is an unusual ability, and I think the specific aspect of that is because it's a vice and a virtue. My ex, I would describe him like that, like he felt everything. But what I observe with you is the ability to put that down on the page in a way, not only to be able to put it on the page, but in a way where I feel the physicality of what you're describing. And I would imagine that that's what would turn it from a vice into a virtue in the sense of its impact on your life. Because I know those who don't transform it,
Yeah, sure. Who are feeling
and
it,
it,
but
it eats
yeah,
them alive.
yeah,
I mean, they just can't.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I feel privileged and lucky as well to be able to do the work
Mm.
that I do, and to be able to. And sometimes I, like most writers, stress about, uh, am I going to get another book deal? Will I be able to go on doing this? Because it feels essential to my kind of my mental health,
Yeah,
my lifeblood, my
yeah,
being. Much more than
mm,
my financial living. I'm sure I'd find out other ways of making it. There are much better ways of making living than writing, for sure. But in terms of
mm,
who I am, and also for the writing to be read by other people, for me is
yeah,
really, really essential, so that we can share this thing, that we can share
yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, I meet you there. It's essential to my life. It's
Mm.
just essential, and it's the being read. I've really spent a lot of time with me, and my ambition have, really hung out together
Mm.
in the last 12 months because I've always been super ambitious, but I haven't really understood what am I really talking about when I talk about ambition, because it is a longing, but it's not to do with fame and fortune and all this kind of stuff. It's to
Mm.
do with this work I do, which I
Mm.
just love so
Mm.
much, getting it out there to reach as many people as
Mm.
possible, because the joy is just, it's off the scale.
Yeah, it is really, really intense. That feeling of,
Yeah,
uh, well, the feeling of, oh yes, you too,
yeah,
yes, or
yeah,
me too, but actually, I
yeah.
find in the writing, it's more me saying to other people, saying to me, this is what I've experienced, and I experienced it through. Some people say to me things like extraordinary things, like the last book that I wrote, the Giant on the Skyline. People say,
Yeah.
I understood, after I read it, I understood things about that I'd had as a 3-year-old child that I didn't really understand. I didn't know how to name that feeling. I mean, lots of people who have about the motherhood book that I wrote, called My Wildest
Mm,
Nights,
yes.
because it's the pink one.
I'll hold that
Yeah.
up too. Yeah.
Thank you. Lots of mothers have contacted me and said that it really enabled me to enjoy motherhood, feel less guilt, feel less anguish about the maternal ambiguity or the violence that I felt, or the how weird I felt, or how homesick I felt. But I did actually love it with The Giant on the Skyline, because I was writing about home. People saying, oh God, goodness, like I understood, stuff from deep in my childhood. So that's why I love the writing, because and I hear other people saying, I'm living my life more. I can feel my life more deeply because of the things that you have communicated and written about, and that just feels like such a privilege. I feel so lucky, and I never take that for granted at all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say a really obvious thing, but that's what writers do. We put it into words, what people are feeling and experiencing, because not everybody is gifted with the ability to do it or the time or the resources, but you and I
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And it's a massive thing, exactly in that. Exactly. And in fact, just to touch on my wild and sleepless nights, I think one of my favorite bits in here, and again, this is a vital moment. I've obviously, look, I so
I
many
love that.
things.
I know. I love seeing all the markers. That's so lovely.
So here it is. Here you are. I think you must be at some baby group or something about making friends, and you say, "But I'd always seemed to get it wrong, unable to resist a compulsion to ask the woman if she recognized this pain I was carrying at having given birth to a love." And this is the bit that got me so huge and terrifying. It often seemed to overwhelm me. Or, and this also got me, I'd completely blow it, just as I felt I might be making a new friend by asking the mother if she had ever experienced the kind of invasive thoughts in which she might smother her new baby, stab her with a bread knife, or throw her off a bridge. I mean, I wish you and I had been friends on Mike, because you could have talked to me.
Do you remember that feeling? I mean, I have it in
Yes, I
America.
remember that feeling.
I have it here though as well, because people take things so literally. So and
Right.
when I first got here, I remember saying to somebody, "Oh, fuck, my children are just annoying me so much. I just want to stab them," or something like that. I mean, which is a normal, as far as I'm
It's
aware,
normal.
normal way of communicating. And someone would look at me like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" It's like
Yeah.
really, really.
No, I mean, I remember when mine were little, and I have obviously had some friends who had littles, and a friend of mine ringing me from the cupboard. And she'd shut herself in the cupboard so that she didn't do anything she might
Just do
regret.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk about disassociation and invasive thoughts. The kind of thoughts that I had, the violence of the thoughts that I had. And weirdly, I had it again when we moved here. And people always say,
Mm,
"What's it like?" Oh, what's it like moving to America? I think they think it's all sort of, well, maybe they don't at the moment. I think they just think it's
mm.
fascism and utter nightmare. But when we moved here in 2023, things were more normal, and I think people thought it was all sort of big yellow buses and fame and
Charlie Brown.
celebrities and yeah, hamburgers. And it is
Yeah.
kind of all of those things. But I started having really bad invasive thoughts about a month after moving here, and I became disassociated. And I suddenly knew, oh right, you're not like something is up mentally, because I had the thing of being in the kitchen and imagining like just driving one of the kitchen knives into the back of the person who was standing beside me, who was either my husband or my child. And I was like, it was very, very, and it was even like,
Okay. And take a breath. No, I know. I mean, yeah. Maybe yeah, maybe America is not the easiest place to try and share those, or maybe in England it is neither. Maybe it's a particular, I don't know what it is, but I get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you need what I was missing here was a sense of the friends that you could be your real self with.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
actually listening to your interview with Elizabeth Day about friendship
Oh,
this morning when I was
so
working out.
great.
It was really,
God, there were
really
so
nice.
many more things. I could have done another. We had an hour, but my goodness, the amount of, anyway, you carry on, but what
But
a
one of the
segue.
things that she said, or you both said, was that like when you're
Mm.
with a true friend, you are in the room. You are truly
Mm.
in the room as
Mhm.
yourself. And I was thinking about
Yeah.
how often I have, and I think this is the same for anybody who moves into a new place or dramatic change of circumstances. I went from living in a tiny rural village in England to living in Washington, D.C., like very dramatic change. And I must
Mm.
say as well, I was very privileged because, moving from a lovely life of great privilege to another life of lovely, great privilege. But it was very, very, very difficult. And I have felt very lonely and I felt disassociated. And I haven't felt as though I could be myself. And when you were talking about it this morning with that interview with Elizabeth, I was thinking that's what it's like. It's like that longing to be seen as yourself. And I suppose when I write, that's where I feel like I can continually turn up as myself. And actually, that's why I quite love Substack, because unlike writing for journalism, you can do what the fuck you want with it. Basically, you haven't got an editor going, I have done a lot of work for the Daily Mail, who I have a lot of time for, and I'm very grateful for that. They've given me a lot of work. But often I'd be writing something, I go, oh, well, what does your husband think? What does he say about this? Can you put in a bit more of something? And you'd think, I don't want to write about that there. Or I can start an article by writing about T.S. Eliot or something like that. I don't know. I like the way you can kind of do what you want, basically, have your own voice.
Yeah, they've created a magic sauce there, and as long as we all continue to be able to run our little ships, it doesn't matter how big it grows.
Yeah.
And I did think that actually when I read a post earlier today of yours about that really shitty day you had when you began the post, like, do you know what? I just need to talk about my shitty day, like bad. I can't get out of bed. And it was just like, oh, it was great because it was like, I just need to put this somewhere. It's a completely safe place to put it.
Yeah.
Nobody has to read it.
Nobody has to read it. Yeah, and you can put a paywall up if you want to, if you want to share stuff more privately. Yeah, it's nice. It is a nice space, definitely.
It's useful. And certainly with friends, I mean, in my Dunbar circle, that very close that Elizabeth and I talked about, there's a handful of women who I will just ring up and say, can I rant? They go, go. And I'll just like all the most mentals out of me.
Yeah.
Only takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I breathe again.
Yeah. No, you have to have that. You have to have that. And if you don't have that, you start feeling as though you have become transparent. And I have sometimes felt that in America, this feeling of like, do I even exist? Where do the edges of myself begin or end? Because I'm not even sure who I am anymore. And I can be in the house with the children, and I know who I am with the children. I spend a lot of time with them, and I genuinely think I'm a really good mother. Then I know who I am then, but in my relationship with other women and friendships and who I am walking around this city on my own, this big city with these big blocks and these big monuments to all these different presidents, which is it's a very beautiful city, and there's much about DC which is incredible. And like seeing every time I see the Capitol, I always feel, and it's so sad as to what it is at the moment, but it is an awe-inspiring place. However, it is also a very lonely place because it's transient. It's an odd place to live, and not knowing who I was and not knowing, I started to feel as though do I actually really exist anymore? Because I have this weird life of a writer where, I've often thought if I did this again, I would go and like work in a bookshop or work in a garden centre or go and volunteer at a school or something in order to have more interaction with human beings. We need that interaction so, so badly. And in my life in England, I had a very, very, even in this very remote little village that I live in, I have very, very, very vibrant interactions with lots of people. I'm not saying they're all my best friends. Some of them, I annoy them and they annoy me, but we have relationships with one another, and we need that so much. And I think that's what there seems to be more and more people talking about that right now, which I think is really important because of obviously the way society feels like it's broken, and any opportunity you can have to interact and have a little conversation just feels so valuable. And I feel more passionate about it than ever, having lived here in this city where people don't really they don't banter, they don't chat, and miss that massively.
Yeah. I've been going on about it to absolutely everybody who asked me as well in terms of the antidote. Like, what's the thing that we can all do and absolutely engage in real time, real conversations with anybody, wherever you are? But that one-to-one human engagement is no, I'm so fascinated that you used the word transparent. That's a brilliant, because again, you see, like, I get it immediately, that sense that I'm becoming transparent. So brilliant.
Yeah, and I have, but I've also loved trying to communicate that, and quite a lot of this new book that I've written, which set out to be about marriage, and it has turned equally into a book about midlife and the feeling of is this feeling of this sort of vague feeling that I'm sort of dissolving, becoming transparent, because I'm a woman walking into I was 50 last year, so like walking right into midlife? Or is it because I'm walking into a completely alien city where I don't know, I don't know anybody? Or is it because I'm feet away the entire time and I'm on my own all the time? So these different questions. So that question of trying to answer that question as I go about my weird life, walking to the library and going to Whole Foods and going to Trader Joe's and going to the coffee shop and so on, and picking the kids up at the school gate, trying to answer that question. What does this really, really feel like? How do I communicate this? Do other women feel like this? Am I just being completely mental, and is it just me? Don't think it is just me, actually. I'm pretty sure there's other people too.
Well, it's funny as well because I'm 54, so there's no doubt that I recognize the shift between that performative attention I was getting on the street and then it's stopping. No question about that. But having said that, I have never felt more real than I do now at 54. Never. But I know myself not reflected in the eyes of others. That's not how I know myself anymore.
Yeah.
That's how I used to know myself. My mother used to say, if it's something like, if someone doesn't see you, how do you know you exist? And I remember thinking, oh my God, Jesus Christ. Okay, let's unpack that when I'm 45. But that's a classic woman's, we exist by reflection in the eyes of others. Whereas now, and then when that stops, okay, then we disappear, apparently. But now I understand my existence in reflection to my inner workings, my inner world, and the work that I do, the writing that I put out, and the community that I engage with on that level, and as human and as a writer. Those are my two. If someone asked me, I don't know if you remember, but Eleanor Carrington was asked to describe her. I think it's Leonora Carrington asked to describe herself, and she said, "I'm a human female, and I live in Mexico." That was her thing, and I always think of that. Yes, I'm a human writer, and I live, so that in terms of my headlines of what my identity is, that's what's changed. Going,
but I don't mean it in a sort of like. I don't mean it in a kind of, I mean, of course there is a sort of sexual way as well, because yeah, like I look at my daughters, for example, and especially my daughter who's an adolescent, and she is kind of blue, I can see her literally sort of like blossoming with estrogen, and it's like she is like all the obvious kind of metaphors of a flower. She is like that, and I can also at the same time feel my own face kind of doing that. But it's not really a sexual thing, because I feel quite kind of like, I don't know, I feel quite like in my marriage and everything, I feel quite kind of confident about where everything is, apart from the amount of time we spend apart. But I do feel as though that we are like together. So it's not just a kind of, oh, I miss the thing of men noticing me in the street or whatever. It was more of a feeling of like emotionally, my emotional life having sort of vanished in some way or another. That sense, and I suppose the two are bound together as well. But and I suppose it was a sense of my actual literal community suddenly gone, and all my friends suddenly gone as well.
Yeah.
And I think that talking about sort of visibility in the eyes of other people, what I really, really wanted, and what I started almost desperately looking for, was for other women to talk to say, are you feeling this as well? Because we need those friendships. Exactly. You're talking about your being up friends and being able to rant. You also need to be able to say this weird feeling, or this kind of thing that's happening to my body, or this change in my jaw, whatever it is. And this like this crazy anger, or this horniness, or this rage, or this thing that's like, all this blood started coming out of me the other day. It's like a massive amount of blood. I was like,
I had
Jesus Christ, is this normal?
Yeah.
And
I had it.
we need
Yeah, I did.
people to talk to
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, we do.
As women, we need people to talk to about that. And when you don't live in the same place, it's really difficult maintaining relationships actually between a different time zone. The sort of jet
Yeah.
lag you feel, I've found it very hard keeping up with my friends in England. And also because the worlds that we're living in are so different, and people think, oh, you're off on just a long, big, jolly 3-year holiday to America. Lucky you. And actually, the reality is so different. But if you say to people, I'm really lonely or I don't like it, then it sounds as though, what right do I have to complain about my circumstances, really? And so there's a kind of there has been a sense living in America that I've just had to get on and deal with it myself. And if I had had my female friends, and it's made me so much more grateful actually for my female friends. And I do feel very much when I come back to England, I will make more of an effort to be with and see my female friends. And the thing of like, I live 2 hours from London in England, and before that, be like, oh God, 2 hours is way too far to drive. Whereas in America, that's like I drive 2 hours. That's like
Nothing.
small afternoon. Have to go and pick something up. That's totally normal.
Yeah.
So, I love the way it's made me. I do actually love my life here in America, and despite the utter horrors of the world, I absolutely love having gone through this really challenging change that was sort of forced upon me, as you will know if you've read, the Giant on the Skyline. I didn't really want to leave, and I wasn't expecting to leave England, age 48. I'm really pleased to have ripped something open and to have had this change. Because sometimes I think maybe this is why people end up having affairs or something, to like change something, to jolt something, some difference into your life. And I don't think Pete's been having an affair, and I definitely haven't been having an affair. But it's nice. It's good to have like done something which really which has brought about a lot of instability, a lot of sense of peril. Actually, one of the things I'm interested in a marriage is that people think of a marriage as like the straight and narrow or settling down, but actually, that it's you have to have some sense of sort of peril in it for it to continue to be compelling, and for it to continue. Well, I find that I need that sense of almost like adrenaline or something to keep that feeling of interest and evolution going on. And maybe that is why one of the reasons why people do have affairs, because they want that. I really don't want an affair at all. And I hate the idea of infidelity.
Where would you find the time?
Yeah, well, there is that actually as well. But that sort of the sense of peril in life and any stage of life is kind of awful, but also brilliant, because it's motivating and exciting and sort of elucidating in some way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just to go back to, the jolt of moving and the turning 50 and the new city, I really get that, how isolating that is, and not being able to have those conversations that if you were in England, you could just ring up your mate and just rant about the blood pouring out of you and what the fuck, man, all of those. Yeah, because of the time difference as well. But so I can see that's a confluence of elements that is pretty tough in terms of, having to deal with. I get that. And the jolt into, I couldn't agree more. I'm doing exactly the same thing, actually. My relationship of 8 years, which I thought was going to be forever, ended brutally last October. And my children left home and my mother died.
Oh, wow.
And so all in that space for about 6 months. And so now I just yesterday or a couple of days ago, I rented a flat in London.
Oh, really?
And I've lived here at the farmhouse for 30 years. And I'm like, right, fuck this shit. I need to jolt. Exactly as you've just said. Like, just shake something a little bit. Because, you need that kind of bit. But it's great to hear you talk about it in terms of a marriage. I've never heard anyone talk about it in terms of a marriage. That's the kind of marriage I'd like if I was ever to do it again, because I couldn't agree more. It's like, come on, man, let's shake things up, right?
And I'm really interested by. It's such right now. There's so much really interesting stuff about relationships being talked about and written about, and the kind of opening up of relationships. And at this age, so many of my friends have been breaking up relationships, and the different versions of how to do a relationship or not, and what you get from a relationship or not. And obviously, there is no right or wrong to any of this.
No.
And all the different permutations are our own personal choices. But I've been interested because it can, in a way, being in a marriage right now, you slightly feel like, oh, am I missing out on all this other stuff that people are doing? And like, is there other stuff going on? And I found it really interesting writing about that feeling of like watching my friends leaving their marriages and thinking, oh wow, that looks full on. And then that looks actually quite exciting. But I don't want, and there's nothing like wrong with my marriage, but I don't want to leave it. But I also don't want to sort of be in a state of kind of complacent boredom or bored complacency. Like I want to feel that there are small bombs going off in some way or another, but I don't want to destroy my life as well. But and I do think that me and Pete have an ability to, I mean, we have massive rows as well. We have like, really, really big rows. We have lots but our ability to communicate with each other, I think, is quite good. Like we talk to each other about what can we do to change this, and how can we, because I've actually found the question of like coming back to England quite difficult in some ways or another, because there's also the sense of, we'll be coming back later on this year, and I don't want to feel like I'm going back to my life, going back. I always want to feel, and this was one of the questions that I addressed in The Red in My Blood as well, which is like the question of grief, is like, when you go through the process of grief, what happens afterwards? Do you just get to a place where the person that you loved is dead and your life carries on in the same way? No, it can't be like that. That's too depressing. That's too, that's too much like hitting a brick wall. There has to be a feeling of some kind of evolution of something through that pain, breaking open and changing. And in a way, I feel like moving back to England is a bit like, I love my life in England, but I don't want to just go back to where we were before, with him working away all the time and me in the mud in England. I want there to be more change and more of a sense of evolution. That's the word that I always keep coming back to. Me and him talk about that. How can we evolve this? How can we make it different or better in some way? So we do talk about that kind of stuff quite a lot, and that is helpful when you're going through one of the periods of lots of arguments or conflict or time apart or whatever, is that sort of feeling of, how can we not go back? I don't want to go back. That's what I really was writing about in The Red in My Blood. I don't want to go back to where I was before Nell died. I can't go back to there. And in grief, one is for a long time longing to go back. And when the person has just died in those first few months, you can kind of stretch back into the past, and you can touch them, and you are close enough to the past to sort of feel like you're still living in that section of life where they are. And then there's this weird thing of, you have to move forward, and you do have to let them go in the past a bit. And it's a horrific thing to say that. But I actually found that once I stopped sort of straining to hold on to my dead sister, and actually stopped desperately looking for her in signs and thinking that, was the blackbird her or whatever, and trying to imagine her here, it was in that moment of leaning forward into my own life that I actually felt as though I re-met her at the time that I would like to be with her most of all, which is like, she died when she was 46, and I was 44. I'd love to be in my like late 20s, early 30s with Nell again. It was really, really fun time when she just started her circus, and my children were young, and it was just a fun time before more grown-up life started in some ways or another. And I felt as though that I sort of refound her because I stopped straining and stopped needing, and I lent into my own life and lent into my own identity and my own creativity. And then she sort of by kind of by leaving that version of her as she had been just for her death behind, as it were, that really, really difficult process that you resist for a long time because it's so unbearably painful, the thought of that, and you don't want to. But there is this gift of grief, which is the kind of, I was talking with a friend about this the other day, which is that when somebody dies, you have an opportunity which you don't want, and even the word opportunity is really bad, to
Yeah.
for other parts of yourself to open up, to find other parts of yourself that you didn't really know were there anymore. And I definitely have found that. And you feel guilty, you feel wrong, you feel anguished, it feels like a betrayal. But you find something else. And I can see that Amy Gabriel, who is commenting, who's written a book about this actually, and it's really, and I can see her doing it on when she posts and writes about it. But that sort of parts of yourself that are there, that you have to be loving enough to yourself and to your memory of the dead person to move into. And also there's nothing that sharpens your mind more to the fact that you're going to be dead, they're dead, and you're going to be dead
Yep.
soon too. So
Yep.
so you go and live that version, that go and be that person, go and find those other parts of yourself that are there while you're still alive, and sort of even doing it to kind of honor the person you can't, the person who's dead. And I think that was something that I was trying to explore in The Red in My Blood, because obviously there is no point with grief where it suddenly gets, oh, this is much better, and a year later I felt much better, and I suddenly found that every time I saw a sparrow I felt that he was there, whatever. It doesn't really, it doesn't happen. Well, for me it didn't happen
No.
like that at all, and it sometimes surges back over me like the most terrible pain. So there isn't, the process of writing a memoir is a very artificial thing anyway, because you're putting like the beginning, the middle, on an end on this
Right.
process of life. But obviously the book
Yes.
had to end. The Red in My Blood, I had to end it on something. So I didn't want to say, well, I went through a year and then it was all much easier. I didn't want there to be that neat resolution, because that neat resolution doesn't exist in real life, and I wanted to be what this really feels like. But that sense of the gift of moving further into yourself, I think, really is part of what grief is about as well.
Do you think that allowed her to evolve to meet you in presence now?
Yeah, do you mean evolve after death?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. And I feel as though our relationship with one another changed and became something more, something different. But also, as I said, it was like it does for me represent something about that period in our late 20s, which was really, really magical. But I do feel as though that there was that she did evolve too post death. Absolutely. And it's very hard to explain what that actually is,
Yeah.
except to say that I know that it's a feeling, and I know it's a way of being, and I know it's a way of presence, and I feel less impaired now. And sometimes, I mean, when I was back in England at Christmas, I was with her children and their dad and his new wife and his little children, and we were talking about her so much. And I'm very close to him, and we were talking about how there's something magic going on, like her returning to our lives in some kind of magical way, um, is really, really powerful. And maybe it's in those first few years of grief that the pain is too acute for that evolution to happen. Like, it's so acute, the pain in the first few years. But then um, the softening, I suppose, that comes with time. But it does feel like there's like a tangible sense of her presence 6 years on, which I am amazed, and I feel like I'm in the presence of some kind of magic when it's happening, like genuine magic. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
so
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways I want to go with this. One of them is actually just to read. I'm going to do it because, um, oh, yeah, very near the end. Is it okay if I read a little bit out of
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
So it's okay. I'm just going to read it. So you've put in bold. I was going to show everybody here. Clover's put in bold, and then she talks about it. Because Nell is dead, my life is richer. And then I'm just going to skip down to when you unpack that a little bit. Because my sister Nell is dead, my life has been broken, and to mend it, I have been given an opportunity to make the life I have left without her richer.
I always wonder if people find it embarrassing when I cry at my own writing, but it's because I feel it so deeply, and I'm relieved that you read it, because sometimes when I do festivals and stuff, they say, "Oh, can you read a bit? Could you read a bit about your sister?" I was like, I can't read this because it will make me cry so much. But it's making me cry because in order to write that, I have to go into the place of re-feeling it and being re-present with the emotion and the pain. And I guess that's where I'm just gonna like wipe my nose on my t-shirt, which was on the table.
I love you. That's so good. Blow it. Give us a big loud blow.
But yeah, so I have to go, like, I have to, and that's what I am like fascinated by, and that's what I love doing, even though it's it is really painful, and it is really confusing, and it is really powerful and overwhelming. And when I'm writing it, I'm not crying. Like, it doesn't
Mm,
make me cry when I'm writing it because I'm so inside it. But I also do get very excited by it when I'm writing it, because
mm,
I know that I can tell when I'm hitting it as well. I can tell when I'm
yeah,
really, really getting there, and I love that.
yeah.
I love that feeling. But thank you for reading that. Actually, I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for writing it for all of us who experience it, all of us who will experience it. You know, that you articulating exactly that opens a doorway to feelings that we might not otherwise have the words for or feel too alone to speak and experience. So thank you for articulating it so beautifully.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
But
It's just really it's really lovely to be able to have this, this conversation, and to recognize these feelings. And I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm
somebody's just
grateful for
asking
that.
what's the book. We're someone's asking what's the book. I'm
Oh
holding it up
yeah,
wherever you can see it.
the red in my blood.
The
Yeah.
red of my blood. So, Clover, before we go, we're nearly at time, but I just want to touch in actually on the magic and the mythical mystery that seems so flowing through you and about you through all of your books and through your very self. And it very much lifts off the page with the
Oh yeah, I
giant.
love this. I love that. I do love that book, actually. I feel
Yeah, I
really,
really loved it.
yeah.
I really loved it. And that sense, just to again actually return to the physicality, that sense of yearning and belonging within the mythical, magical landscape of
Mm.
England. How do you experience that now? And is it a very strong pull? And is that why you're coming back?
Back. No, we're coming back. So we will have been here. We're coming back because we were never moving here long term. England is my home. I've got two of my children there. And my heart is there, my being is there, and my sensibility is there. And my children are English, and my husband is Scottish, and our life is, so my children are British. So our life is there. And so coming back is that was always the plan, to come back. And what I feel is that about England is that I feel so much love for England or Britain, so much. When I come back, I'm able to see some of the things that I think that when you live there, you just forget about, and that some people are forgetting about with what's happening with the politics at the moment. But in our country, our ability to communicate with each other and to care for each other is so, and our sense of humor. And I know the humor is an obvious one in relation to America, because Americans and British have very different sense of humor. And I'm not saying Americans aren't funny, but we do have a very, very different sense of humor. And in England, we use our humor all the time in the way that we interact, the inflection of our voice, and the way we move an eyebrow, everything. We use it all the time, and I feel so grateful for that, and I look forward to that so much. But the sense of kind of mystical green England, which is what I grew up with, and which is like imprinted in me, and which I wanted to imprint into my, without wanting to sound nationalistic. So I'm also aware, Pete sometimes said to me, "Oh, you sound like," it's the same, like, it can sound too nationalistic, that as well. But there is a feeling of wanting to know the place that I can go to, and wanting the children to know the place that they could go to where they felt themselves. And I'm not saying where they felt where they belonged, because they can belong all over the place, and loads of people can belong in places they're not born in, and but the place where they felt themselves. And I'm watching my older child, my oldest son particularly, is doing things creatively in England, which I feel really, really proud of, and it's very much more in a sense of place. But I know from living in America that I carry a landscape inside my beating heart, which is England, and I can come here and have a very nice life here and find, I adore West Texas, where I also feel a great sense of home, but it isn't actually my home. But when I go there, I feel as though the landscape that I am carrying in here can realize itself a bit in Texas.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it.
And when I go back to England, I'm really looking forward to having it not just carrying it inside me, but having it around me as well. And I think I have been aware in the last 3 years of living here of that of carrying that yearning. But you have to put it, a bit like grief, like you have to put it away. I had to let go of England in order to get into it here, and that was a painful process. And that was what the disassociation and the intrusive thoughts about knives in the kitchen was all about. Was like me letting go of, like, holding on to England. I was letting go.
Okay.
And I feel there's a lot that I'll miss about America. And I do, and there is a sense of kind of daring about America and expansion. There is a sense of, which at times, and we are seeing it on the global stage at the moment, self belief is really actually unappealing and not good for humanity. But there is a sense of, like, the bigness and the way of, I was reading about some of the first settlers coming here, and it's exactly what I was talking about. In England, I used to think driving 2 hours was a long way, whereas driving here, you have to drive 2 hours to just go a short distance, a tiny distance, no distance whatsoever. And that feeling of that suddenly the world becomes bigger and bigger. And for me, knowing that the landscapes of Western America, like West Texas, which I feel so moored to, existed, has sort of enabled me to deal with living in Washington DC, which has been a really, really alien landscape for me to exist within for 3 years. So that sort of sense of the bigness, and I'm looking out the window, the bright blue sky, the light that is here all the time. It's really wonderful. But England is the grainy, textured, comforting, muddy, annoying, grey sense of England, which is so fucked up, but so lush as well. And I really tried to convey that in The Giant of the Skyline, the sort of feeling of, I love small provincial towns in England that haven't been turned into sort of like tourist destinations, but which are an old high street with some really crap shops and Greggs. I love the feeling of that. I love the feeling of, like, the sort of realness of that. And that's what I don't live in the Cotswolds, thank God, and it's become so sort of like glossy and nightmarish, and I feel sad that there's large parts of the countryside are becoming sort of Disneyfied, and the area that I live, I don't think it ever, I mean, I pray that it won't. It hasn't been sort of glossified in the way that the Cotswolds has. And although I'm sort of relatively near there because I'm in the corner of like Oxfordshire and Wiltshire,
Yeah.
and the sense of local variation and local people who've gone to school locally, who've gone to state schools. I'm like, believe passionately, almost violently, in the importance of sending children to state school. I think the best thing that could happen to England would be the abolition of the two-tier education system.
Me too.
Um,
Me too.
I think that, and I think that if we could all, and I know it's an idealized view, and I know that there would be problems. I know there'd be pockets of property that was incredibly expensive and so on and so on, but having this system where children are set up to be separated according to sort of class, income, I think is just so bad. And so the sense of sort of local life I really, really, really love, and I'm really looking forward to returning to that and being part of that and being part of community and the sort of village life. And I'm not saying like I'm a great volunteer and I get massively involved, and I'm sure I annoy people locally because for various things like my dogs getting out or my children behaving badly and having late night parties and stuff like that. But I love all of that. I love all of that as part of, as I said earlier on in the conversation, the interaction with one another, even if it's, irritating to one another. And actually, I have become, from living here, I do feel more like I do want to get more involved in actual local activities that I might have, I don't know, been too busy with the small children. But I want to get more involved in village life and local life because that's human to human interaction. We don't really have anything other than that. Really, that's at the heart of everything. That is the heart of community, heart of kindness, heart of charity, heart of what love basically is in some way or another. And without that, we're lost, I think. So that's kind of what England represents to me. And then obviously where I live on the Ridgeway is green and lush, and there's the sort of ancient nature of it. But it isn't just the sort of picturesque ancient nature. It is also the Greggs on the crappy local high street.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like an English village fete or a cake sale or any of that. There is something beautiful about it, that interaction. I mean, I live up on my hill, and I don't take an enormous part of what goes on in the village, but it is Surrey, and Surrey has been taken over by small white posts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just cut. Yeah. So I ride my horse, and we didn't get onto horses. God damn it! But anyway, I ride my horse. But the other thing I think about England, because I lived in Australia for 6 years, so I really, and I miss being able to lie down in a field.
Oh yeah.
And not die.
Worry. Yeah. No, I remember when we moved here, we have like a small garden, and we were moving here in August, and I thought, well, I'll have a rug out in the garden, I'll get a paddling pool, the children can be outside, and that'll be fine. And I had no idea that the grass would be so dry, it'd be like lying on razor blades or something. And then the bugs and the mosquitoes and the humidity means you don't even want to go outside anyway because it's so hot. And those, like an English spring and summer. I actually think the English climate is actually really, really amazing. And I know people go, oh, God, don't mean, but it is because it's mild and easy. And okay, it's this bit now, January, February, March, where it's wet and grey and it's like living in
pouring with rain.
box. That's hard. But it's actually, the weather in America is insane. I didn't know the whole country was insane weather all the time. Like most of next week is -8 during the daytime for me. It's like, this is just in Washington, D.C. and it's so hot here in the summer that you can't go outside. So it does really, really make you appreciate small things and food. The quality of food in England is so high.
Yeah.
It's so high.
Yeah. I'm glad you're reminding us of that.
And I know people say England's got very cheap, but very expensive, but compared to America, it's so expensive and the quality of food is terrible. So there's little things like that, which are actually really fundamental to your life. I'm looking forward to going to my local co-op and having a picnic in a field. That's like heaven.
Yeah. And also, just to return finally again to this, the ancient language. If you are born whichever country you're born in, you speak the ancient language of that land by rote. It's just, I believe it's embedded in the cells. That's why, if I and frequently do take magic mushrooms or any kind of hallucinogenic, it'll always be local. I won't be going and buying them from some other country or medicine, whatever it is, because if it grows here, it's already embedded. The language is embedded in my
That's
cells.
so interesting, because what ages and ages ago, when I was writing for the Sunday Times Style, so it was probably about started off as when I was a single mother in my 20s. I was doing loads and loads of journalism, and I had to write this trend. I used to write for Style all the time, and I had to write this trend piece about ayahuasca and herbal medicine. And it was before ayahuasca was all trendy, and I wrote about and it was in about 2010, 2007, something like that. So no, less than that. It was about 2005, because my son was born in 2000. So he was about 4 or 5, something like that. So it was 2004, 2005, when all that was ayahuasca. People weren't all talking about it all over everything. And I wrote about ayahuasca and said, and there were all these sort of big fancy lodges start just people, the idea that you could go and do that. And I said, actually, if you're interested in kind of plant medicine, what you should do is, rather than fly off to Brazil and take ayahuasca, is to go to a field in England and take some magic mushrooms and drink some cider and watch some Morris dancing, because that is what is part of your if you are English, that is what is part of your being, and I was always really pleased with that thesis. So I love hearing you saying that.
I think you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. And the ayahuasca, I don't know what I want to call it, but I mean, it has just swept England, and so it drives me mad. It makes me laugh. It infuriates me. I walk away. And I've done ayahuasca, and I did do it here, and I did do it with a Peruvian guy, and it did dramatically change my life. There's no question about it. So I did that. But there's no question that the medicine that I have taken, born of this land, born of the land that I am born of, you shortcut so much in intelligence transference and understanding. There's just no question about it at all. Yes. So you were right, Clover.
Yeah, here's some magic mushrooms in Morris dancing.
Here's some magic mushrooms. Yeah. So when you come back, yeah. Oh, look, I'm going to let you go. It's 15:15 here, and we've gone a bit over time. But
it's been really lovely. I've really, really enjoyed it.
It's been so lovely. I love you. That's what I want to say. I love you.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you so much for also giving my writing, and therefore my life, so much attention. I really, really do truly appreciate it. And this has been a really, really lovely conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's a real pleasure. What I'm going to do to end, just so that everybody's watching, I'm going to hold them up in order. Okay? The wild other. The red of my blood. My wild and sleepless night. And the giant on the skyline. And I cannot wait for the next one. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much indeed. It's been really, really lovely. Okay. And I'll see you in England, I hope. All right.
I'll see you in England. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.